Hello YouTube, and welcome back to Steel Force Welding and Forge. Today, I am going to walk you guys through the step-by-step process on how I built my blacksmithing guillotine tool. Right, so I've got these two spots laid out. Now, when you're using a high impact tool, you don't want sharp corners like this. That's going to put unnecessary strain on your tooling. You want to have nice rounded corners. So what I'm going to do in an effort to both make this easier to cut this part out and also reduce that stress, I'm going to drill a hole here in the corners so I have a nice rounded corner. Oh, that's gonna be a problem. Looks like we'll just go up a size. Okay, so we've got our pilot holes drilled. We don't want to go from a 3/16 bit all the way up to 1/2 inch. We want to gradually work our way up there. Drill a little bit, stop, and pour some oil down the drill bit. That little catch right there is probably because I'm just about through the hole. So typically what I do, I'll put the drill in reverse. It'll kind of break that last curl and also kind of smooth off that last bit of that chip in the bottom of that hole. There we go. I'm gonna go ahead and pause the video. I'll start it up again once all these holes are drilled. All right, all my holes are drilled. However, after looking at the size of these holes, 3/8 is plenty big, and also one of my holes kind of drifted off to one side and it's really close to where I'm going to be cutting. So I'm just going to leave these holes as they are, and after I cut these out, I'm going to be stacking them together and filing them clean to get rid of any kerf from the torch, and also to make sure all the edges match up. So I'm just going to leave them how they are for now. The next step is going to be cutting this guy with a torch. Going all right. Slow but steady. part number 1. Don't think I'm going to bore you guys with part number 2. Alright, here are my 2 pieces. As you can see, they're pretty crude. Now the next step is going to be to clamp them together and clean everything off and match everything up. I did cut these on the big side because I knew that torch would be struggling. So this is probably going to take a while. I'll show a few minutes of it, and the rest I'll do off camera. Alright guys, I'm going to show you a quick walkthrough of what I did. So the first thing I did is I took one edge here, right here, and I squared it off with a file, took my time, made it nice and square, and then using that point as a reference, I also squared off this point and this point. So now, if we take a combo square, you hold up to here, as you can see, those points are almost perfectly square. And then, same thing up top. So now, these points, 1, 2, 3, 4, are almost all square to each other. So now I can take this part, line it up with my other block, and then I can grind them both. I can grind that one to get close to this one and then finish it with a file. So now I've got both these parts lined up with a little bit of overlap on my square sides, so I can finish off this top here if I want with a file to make it look nice. So what I'm going to do is grind these down until they match roughly, then file them both, this edge and this edge, and then we're pretty much done with these 2 parts here for now. So high up here or low down here. While you're doing this, also take note to look down your part, as most people tend to favor one side or the other with a grinder. Right now I'm favoring this side. This side is a little lower than this one. So I'm going to come over here and turn my grinder slightly. So now, getting a little bit high in the middle, I've been favoring my ends. So now we're going to work the middle a little bit. Bit high right here. There's barely any light coming through there at all. So now, I'm going to grind this side just a bit, because I can see that this side's high, without touching this side. The second I start touching my square part, I need to stop. Just about there. I'll just hit this with a file a few times. I'm gonna go crazy here. I will put shims in these when I bolt them together to make room for dies, and then put adjustment screws in there, but still, Let's do a good job, make it nice. Just want to show you guys where I'm at. I cleaned up almost all the edges on this part, except for this inside edge here. This is going to take quite a bit of cleaning up. I think maybe I may clean these parts separately. If these two parts don't perfectly match up, it's not really going to affect how this product performs. But now, what I want to do is I want to make sure that this surface and this surface are almost perfectly square to each other. As they sit right now, they are very close. But for final tune, I'm going to take a very heavy-duty rasp file and just very carefully send that right over the top like that. And what that's going to do is it's going to hit all those high spots and leave those low spots alone. And eventually I'm going to get this to a place where this face, and this face are almost perfectly square to each other. If I can accomplish that, I'll have a very decent tool. All right, we've got our parts cleaned up for the most part. And take a look here. See how square we are? Oh, look at that. That is beautiful. There's one. Here's two. Beautiful. There we go. Next is going to be cutting the rest of the parts. We're going to need a base, a part connecting the top, bottom. I'll probably put another part in here to connect it back in here somewhere. That way there's just a little added rigidity, as well as maybe something, I may add something back here as well. We'll kind of see as we go. So we'll go ahead and cut those parts, as well as a stake for the hardy hole. Alright, so all of my parts are cut. However, while I was doing a dry fit up, I noticed there was a small problem. Now, a dry fit up is when you just roughly put all your parts together without any welding at all, just to see if everything works out and that there isn't any interference and that all your parts are cut roughly to the same size. The problem I noticed is both of these parts are warped fairly bad. You may have a hard time seeing it. That part actually kicks off to the left there pretty hard. Enough to the point where it rocks. And this one is the exact same way. That is not good. So that has to be taken out. So what I'm going to end up doing is throwing these guys in my forge, heating them up, and then putting this plate on top and striking that plate on top of my anvil. This way I won't be putting any additional hammer marks in here. I don't have to. And it gives me an excuse to use the new setup I have on my new forge. put that part in water, good chance that it'll warp if I do that. So it's probably gonna take a good 20 minutes to cool down. Part number 2, that is marked the neck so I know which side to strike it on. So because this assembly is going to be TIG welded together, I want to make sure I have some nice clean surfaces. So I'm going to go ahead and clean off all these dirty surfaces here with a wire brush or wire wheel, as well as going ahead and grinding bevels on a few of these parts. For example, this guy, I'm going to be welding to the base like this, so this can fit in my hardy hole in my anvil. However, because this is such a heavy-duty piece of steel, this guy's a lot thinner, I'm going to put a bevel on here so I can still get a good, nice, good weld on there, but I don't have it sticking out with a large fillet. If I have a large fillet, I won't be able to fit it into my hardy tool. Then I'm probably going to go ahead and bevel the inside support parts as well. Just so if I decide to put an additional weld on the opposite side where the die will be sliding, I can put a tiny itty-bitty little weld in there just to add a little bit of extra strength, but it won't interfere with that die. All right, so I've got all the parts that are going to be welded together, prepped and ready to go. Now it's time to mark out some hole locations and drill some holes in the parts that are going to be holding the face of this assembly together. The parts going on here and here are going to be bolted on. This will allow for different sized dies to fit in here without having to worry about too tight of a fit in case I were to weld the entire assembly together, to say. So I'm going to go ahead and mark those out right now. 3/8 that way. 3/8 there. My 3/8 in there. Actually, I'm going to do it on this side. I already have a line on that side. I don't want to get confused. 3/8 there. There's one mark. There's the other. And just for accuracy, I'm going to turn around the other way and mark in the opposite direction here. So we do want to be fairly accurate and fairly careful here. A light tap. As well. Again, we want to be pretty careful here. Little tap. Good. Give it a good tap. There we go. There's 3/8 in one direction. Go set this outside. Well, I just realized that my camera was turned off, and unfortunately, I did not record any of the layout that I was doing for the holes I'm drilling and tapping. Well, long story short, I'm going to be drilling with a number 7 drill bit on these parts because these holes are going to be tapped. Because in essence, what I'm going to be doing is putting this part here, and this part will be here. Now, with any kind of layout, you want to be really careful. Make sure you're very picky with your measurements. I made my measurements accurate within a 32nd of an inch. So, for example, this part is 7/16 of an inch thick. So, half of that is not going to be 1/4 inch. That's going to be, let me do the math here in my head for a second, 7/32. That is very important if you want to get your parts to fit correctly. Now, this guy also had a little bit of overhang during a dry fit up, so I had to move these holes in 32nd of an inch as well. If you don't do that, your parts are not going to fit, or there's going to be a lot of slop. So just be very careful with your layout. So next step is going to be drilling these guys and these guys. These will be drilled with a 1/4 inch bit. These will be drilled with a number 7 drill bit, according to the tap and die chart. Lock that in. We're going to be taking it easy, using lots of oil. First, let me get this hole started before I add any oil. Now now that I have that hole started, now I'll start adding a little bit of oil at a time. Okay, I've got the setup ready for drilling the number 7 holes for tapping in my part. I squared this part to my part here, so hopefully we'll get a good hole. And I also have a depth set here for about, I believe it is 5/8 of an inch. I only need to go about 1/2 inch deep, but I want to go just a little bit further than that so I can get some good threads there on the bottom, so my bolt will be able to almost bottom out if I wanted to, and also tighten down a little bit more. So we're going to go ahead and drill this hole. Unfortunately, I ran out of room on my phone, or storage space that is, so I had to go through and delete a bunch of stuff, and unfortunately you guys missed a bunch of boring time of me drilling holes. How sad. Well, anyway, so here we are. We're getting ready to tap our holes now. I did tap one hole and test it. Come to find out, needed to drill a little bit deeper. I have all these holes now drilled at about 1 inch down. It's more than enough room, and more than enough room to get that tap all the way down to the bottom. So whenever you're tapping holes, the first thing you want to do is take countersink and just lightly countersink the top of all those holes. This just makes it easier for your tap to center itself when you're first starting out. Now, what you know, when I tapped by one hole, I actually destroyed the cheapo wrench that I had for tapping holes, so this thing is junk. You can use a crescent wrench. You just got to be really careful because you're not putting equal force on both sides. I'm going to show how to tap just one hole, then that'll be it. We'll just go skip ahead to something else. So first, you want to put a copious amount of oil on your tap. Go ahead and throw it in your hole. You just kind of want to push down and turn and just kind of judge it with your eye. Keep it as straight as you can while using downward pressure. And straight as in, I mean square. Doesn't hurt sometimes to take a step back and look at it on both sides. It looks good. I'm going to keep going. After a while, your tap will gain enough threads that you won't have to push down as much while you're turning. We're just about there now. So as you're turning, you'll start to feel resistance build up. That is the chip that your tap is cutting. What you want to do after a while, you'll feel that resistance kind of build up to the point where it's like, wow, it's taking a lot of pressure. Just turn it back the other way and listen. Feel kind of a pop like that. You just need to break that chip off that's inside that hole. Then you can continue tapping your hole. And you may have to break that chip fairly often, which is what I've had to do on these holes here already. Go back, pop that chip, or break that chip off. Again, break that chip off. And sometimes it doesn't hurt to get about halfway done with your cutting. Take your die out, your tap I should say, and just clean it off with a rag. Get rid of all that crap in there. I mean, this is a blind hole. Your chips don't have anywhere to go, so they're all just building up and building up on your tap. But you don't want to go crazy. Take your time. You reef on this thing too hard, and you will break it. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and back it out now and clean it off. I'm getting quite a bit of resistance pretty often. It tells me that hole's getting really dirty. And with holes, you only have one chance to get it right. You screw it up, you are screwed. So we're going to be very careful here and take our time doing this. Go ahead and oil that guy up a little more. You want to carefully start your hole again. You don't want to cross thread your tap. You will destroy all the threads you have cut. As long as you kind of push down gently and just feel, you'll catch on back onto that hole or those threads you've been tapping pretty easily. going. Break the chip. Keep going. The more often you break that chip, the less likely you are of damaging your tap. So, clean bolt. Doesn't hurt to run a bolt through here as well after you've tapped, just to kind of help clean everything out. There you go, nice and tight. I'm going to go ahead and tap the rest of these guys off camera. Alright, so we've got all of our holes tapped. Unfortunately, I did have one hole, this guy right here, that wandered on me pretty bad. So all I did was I went back and I drilled out all the holes on this plate here, a 1/16 up. So instead of 1/4 inch holes, they're now 5/16. This gave me enough slop that I could get my part in here. Now you may recall that while I was putting this together, I noticed that these C parts here, we'll call them, that these were lopsided, they were bent. And that was just the nature of the material. So I put them in my forge and straightened them. I got them mostly straight, however, they still would bow out. And unfortunately, when I put this together, there was a large gap in the back here where I would be putting this part right here. So what I did was I took some C-clamps, clamped it together, and now this part will fit in here nice and snug, as you can see. And this fits in here nice as well. So the next step is going to be to tack this up, this part here, this part on here, and then this whole thing onto this plate here. However, there is one thing here I want to stress. When you weld something, metal moves, it warps. Now this guy may not warp as much as you would expect, but it's still going to warp. If I were to take this piece here, push up against this, which is going to be the die, the top and bottom. If I clamp this on here tight and tack this and then weld it, if this warps, this thing is not going to want to move. In order to get this to move, I'll have to modify the die. I don't want to do that. So one thing you can do is just take a small shim. In this case, this is just a piece of cardstock. This is maybe a 1/64 of an inch thick. What I'm going to do, I'm going to put it behind this guy right here. Then clamp it on like this, clamp this part on like so, and now I'm going to tack it into place. Just that little piece right there is going to give me enough wiggle room that if this piece warps, this will still fit in here, and it's not going to be super tight. I'll be able to move it. So we're going to go ahead and tack this guy up, and then I'll show you the results after that. Here we are. Now, you should be able to tap this out, get the shims out, and it should move around fairly smoothly. I can already feel it's a little bit tight. Getting this thing out of here was indeed a pain in the butt. I had to put a clamp on it, then tap this so the rubber melt to get it out. But again, I did have these shims in here, And thank goodness I did, because now, look at that. Just a hair bit of wiggle room, which is exactly what you want. Because I can always drill and tap 2 more holes in here to hold this tight. So there's going to be a die here on the top, and another one here in the bottom. So what'll happen, die here, steel in here, put your steel in here, strike this, and there you go. So, all that's left, tack this part on. Now, my anvil, the hardy hole, is not square to my part. So what I'm going to do, tack this on here square, put it on my anvil, and then turn this part so that this is square to my anvil, not this square to my plate. 'Cause otherwise, this will be sitting on my anvil like that. And I'm not going to like that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Then probably put a few stitch welds on there, and this will be good to go. All right, we're all cooled off. Let's check the fit up. There's the bottom die. Ooh, look at that. Now that is a thing of beauty. Just a tad of wiggle room, but it's not getting hung up. It hits that die nice and square. Oh, pretty square. I think I might have to adjust the die on the bottom. Maybe square out the bottom a little bit. You can see there's a little bit of light in there. But hot dang, that's nice. Very nice. right, so here are my final thoughts on this build. I am so happy that I did this. This was not only a good test of the equipment I have, but also of my personal skills. It also kind of showed me the shortcomings of some of my tooling. That drill press needs to go. That thing, just for what it is not going to serve my needs. I need to invest in a larger drill press that has a rigid setup. That'll help me drill holes like up here on this side plate square, which was a big problem, and the main reason why I had to enlarge the holes on this front plate here, which in reality is a fairly common practice in engineering and manufacturing, so if you have to do it at home, not a big deal. But look at the results. I mean, you cannot argue with the results. I would argue that's almost a professional looking hand-forged product right there. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what I can accomplish with this tool. Looking back, I think maybe these side pieces here, I would have outsourced them, maybe had them cut on a plasma cutter or a water jet and then had them sent to me. But I, again, wanted to test the limits to all of my tooling as well as testing my own skill set. All right, guys, before we go, please hit that thumbs up button, please hit that subscribe button, and please share this video on whatever social media format you prefer. I appreciate the thumbs up and the subscriptions I've been getting. We're slowly starting to climb that ladder, so thank you for all you guys have done for me, and I'll see you next time.